Thank you, Pratt, and thank you everyone for joining us today to our session, which we've titled "Journeying from an Ecosystem to an Ecosystem," and with the hope that we're here to reflect on lessons learned from nurturing and working with educational communities in Bangladesh. So, a quick introduction for myself: I'm Shakil Ahmed, based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. I usually introduce myself as an educator, futurist, and a storyteller, and I'm part of an initiative called Ridiculous Futures, which I hope you guys know where that's from Jim Dater's line, any useful statement about the future should appear to be ridiculous. I currently also involved with some of our government's programs around blended learning, our new national curriculum, and I think we'll talk about all that in a bit. And I'll just keep it short and I'll pass it off to Aswa. Yeah. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Shakil. Hi, everyone. I'm Aswa. I'm an educator. I've been teaching since 2015. I've been teaching at a university here. And I started my organization in 2016. I run a foundation. Basically, the foundation has a school where we experiment with different teaching learning approaches. The ones that give the best outcome in terms of student learning, student-teacher relationship, and the whole environment. We take those up, make those into teacher development programs and deliver them in forms of workshops, courses through a teacher development platform. So that's me. Looking forward to sharing more and learning from you all. I'll pass it on to Mehdi Bhai.
Hello everyone, this is Mehdi Hassan and I work for 8Y, which is Aspire to Innovate. It's a government of Bangladesh flagship program for rapid digitization of the governance and across many sectors. And I basically work as national consultant for e-learning here, and I manage our e-learning platform called Muktapat, which is our largest e-learning platform right now. And besides, I work with Shakil and Azwa sometimes in the Next Gen Edu platform, and also with our policy reform initiatives and digitization initiatives and so on. So really glad to be here with you and hope to share this space and learn from you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehdi. And just to just for everyone's framing, I think we're just going to keep this into an adda format. And adda is basically a word that I think South Asians will probably appreciate, or Bengalis will appreciate. The idea that it's chill, it's like a hangout. We're just going to openly reflect. We haven't really prepared each answer, so I'm also looking forward to hear what my counterparts also say. And yeah, and I think and maybe feel free to ask any questions along the way, but maybe when we have 15 to 20 minutes left, then we'll just open it up and anyone can also join us in this adda as well. So as a start, yeah, Azra, maybe any of you could kick us off. Like, I think before we just go straight into the root of talking about the communities and the ecosystem, like what's the state of education in Bangladesh, just for the audience here. Either of you want to go? Azra, go, yeah.
Cool. I can go. So pre-COVID, we're in Bangladesh, where we're doing great in terms of access. We're doing great in terms of literacy rate, but in terms of actual learning in classrooms, we're quite far behind, and which is what shows the quality of education in terms of students being able to do students reading, writing, or math skills. Grade 5 students, only 25% of grade 5 students are able to read, write, or do basic math at their grade level. So the whole scenario in terms of how well the students are progressing is quite daunting. Pandemic happens, schools are shut down from March 2020. It's a very scary situation because school, the only place where many of the first generation learners had access to any kind of education, the only place that was closed. And a lot of the approaches, a lot of the interventions taken up by the government to air, to have television broadcasted lessons, to have online platforms open up, and many such efforts were actually having no outcomes, because not essentially no outcomes, but very limited outcomes, because approximately 17% of the households have internet. So majority of these children were not in touch with any kind of formal education for a very long time, for about 18 months. And during this time, many of them did not have access. Some of them did, and some of them were progressing well. So it's a mixed situation, and in some ways the divide, the gap created by this digitization has widened between the haves and not haves, and during this time, many new initiatives, many individuals are coming together to tackle the problem, because we realize that the problem is too big to be solved by any one individual or two individuals as such. And so this is the current scenario, and it's interesting. I think I'll just stop here, and I'll loop in Mehdi Bhai to start from during COVID.
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Adwa, for this. And I personally believe that two different things that connects us very well. Like, one is education, which essentially connects us from the childhood when we first appear in our school, and then we get connected with our peers, and we get to know about ourselves as well as about others. So I think like education, another thing that connects us very well is like the crisis. In any crisis, we the first word comes from our mouth is like, oh my God, oh my goodness, oh Jesus, hi Bhagavan, and so on and so on. So and also we try to look around us, who is with us at our crisis. So this has been the greatest crisis of our time, the COVID pandemic. And the first day we officially our government officially locked our schools, or was 18th March, I guess, last year. And on that day, our State Minister of ICT, Honorable State Minister of ICT, he has invited us for a forum, just out of his idea started, and we discussed about what we have, and how we can collaborate with each other, and how we can put our efforts together to fight this unforeseen situation. And I think that time we were very quickly came up with a business education continuation plan for our country, and which was endorsed through the education ecosystem players and the policymakers, and later endorsed by our education minister. And we formed a platform called EduHub, and which was essentially for connecting all the available materials, all the assessment, all the tools that are available. And as the physical education system was on hold, so to move on from the physical to the digital within very short time, it was really tough situation for us. And so it was a collective effort that all the organizations came together, and they had all the role players are having their own initiatives quite separately. And sometimes, the conventional thought of the government is like that we are enough, we don't need anybody else's help. But this is the egos and the crisis that made us learn about the importance of all the players of our ecosystem, and how we are all important to each other, and how all the efforts can be connected. So I think on the pandemic time, this effort was it created a base for our education system. All the players, they played their part very well, and there were many initiatives coming up. And together, I think we tried to launch the television classrooms, the radio-based classrooms, and online classrooms, and most importantly, how the grassroots level teachers and parents responded. Like we have seen that there are hundreds of online classes. Those are basically the Facebook-based classrooms that where the teachers came up and they take classes, and sometimes Facebook is uh, equal to internet in our concept. Many people think that Facebook is internet. So all the initiatives together, it created a new vibe, like the importance of us rather than me and my initiative. So I think it was a good start, and I think Shakil can share some build on this and share what we are planning for the new normal situation.
Mhm. Yeah, no, thank you. And then I'm just thinking out that, yeah, I mean, whatever energy that was created in terms of organizations connecting with each other, right? I mean, I don't think necessarily that happened just in one day, right? And I think there were like a lot of informal, both formal and informal ways in which we got connected with each other, right? Which really helps us in mobilizing whenever there's a time of crisis, right? And I think even the three of us, right? Like how do we actually know each other, right? And how do we actually even started to build trust with each other, right? And I think that uh, I mean with in Azwa's case, I believe the first time that we met was at BRAC's Frugal Innovation Forum, right? And I don't think we actually met during the formal sessions itself, right? It's just because it's there was a lot of informal time, right? Because people stay over during the conference and all that, right? And I think those informal spaces are definitely great in this term of I mean, I think most networking probably happens outside the conference, right, rather than within the conference. And I think that, but then with Mehdi Bhai and also I think we kind of got to know each other because we did this Futures of Education in 2041 project, right, where we used foresight and futures techniques, future studies methods to actually kind of get government and non-government stakeholders into the same room, right? And I think we did it over 3 workshops, and I believe like a lot of the trust and dreaming and imagination that we created together, like that still sticks on, right? Like a lot of the relationships that we formed back then, like, and I think I just wanted to say that I just felt like, I mean, it doesn't have, I mean, to be very honest, it doesn't have to be future studies and foresight necessarily, right? But any pedagogical method that allows people to share on a peer-to-peer basis, or to dream together, or to imagine together, really creates a different vibe itself, right? People getting out of their own normal roles that they're playing, right? To say that it doesn't matter what my authoritative position is, but here I am, I'm coming to dream together with you. And I feel that the Futures of Education work was kind of like that. Maybe Azwa, if you want to talk about your experience there.
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about Bragg's Frugal Innovation Forum, I was thinking we were having a chat on the deck, and we were just talking about how we should form, like, we should form a group where
Actors, yeah.
we come together to to plan, to think about what education could look like, what are the possibilities, and then the Futures A2I, or the Futures Summit on Education organized by A2I. So it's a workshop format. And I remember, a lot of those thinking was put down on pen and paper. We did a lot of drawings, and that was the first time I came across the systems thinking, the causal layer analysis, and all of that. So it was interesting, and what you were saying about dreaming together, that's a different kind of bond. Like, we have same kinds of aspirations, or all of us know that we want to we probably have a similar kind of destination, but variations of it, versions of it, and how that pulls people together. And I remember even during the pandemic when we were having a lot of discussion, I remember one day I was venting on the phone with you. I was saying, you know, people are saying we should do this webinar or we should have that discussion, but what about the students who have access to nothing? And then I remember we had this discussion in a bigger group, and on my on my own, with some of you on board, I started this Reimagining education series where I really wanted to bring up some of the discussions, bring at least bring up some of the topics that I felt would do justice to the group of people who are out of network, who are not who did not have access to internet and so on. And even like that momentum remained, and how Next Gen Edu, the group or the platform that has been formed with the hope of creating an ecosystem, creating a larger community of people, of organizations, initiatives to come together to dream and to walk towards a destination, a similar destination formed or came about. So yeah, it feels nostalgic as we speak, but I'm also trying to find out the key components in or the things that have been similar across the different initiatives that came up, and one of them is the hope and aspiration, and also reaching out to each other, because knowing that the other person probably feels the same to some extent. So I think the factor of trust builds with it. So yeah, Medhibai, would you like to add something, or Shakil, do you want to take it from here?
I think I can add one particular moment. It was just before the launching of the report, because we were talking about the report, the Future Education Report, and how we visioned the 2041's Bangladesh. So it was just before the launching of the report. We were in the green room with one of my colleague, Rakib Bhai, and we were wrapping the reports, like to present and how to unwrap the reports. The traditional works.
Because the ministers were there,
yeah, the ministers were there, and the education minister, as well as I think the telecommunication and ICT minister. So a lot of people, and in front of them there were around 300 teachers and all the role players. So on that minute, we were thinking that this is the accumulation of all our effort, and we are trying to present this in front of the house, and we are very hopeful that the as much as we can transfer. But it was quite astonishing that the report were in the hand of our education minister, and she wrote, I think probably from A to Z of the report, the whole report, when she was in the chair. And also she requested for more copies. And also after about 2.5 years from that event, she still remembers that moment, and how the report was a great surprise to her, and the impact. So I am not referring this like this is the way of history telling or a story history being made, but this is something that really empowers me, myself, and as well as the community I work with, and how the energy between the committee can move like the ocean, what is ocean but multiples of drops. So I think that every action that we take in our hand and we feed with our heart has the potential to change the world, and this is very important to realize our true potential. So I think this is very important for all the ecosystem players to recognize this. Yeah, over to Shakil.
Remember, yeah, even like a few days ago, I think the minister, I think she actually used the word that it reminded her of going back to the future, right? And I think because we were using backcasting and backward planning methods in there as well. But I think even Mehdi, right? The connection with A2I was actually by a futurist, right? So it was actually I think Sohail and Atullah, who I met in 2012 when I was working at BRAC University. We did a workshop together on the futures of BRAC University in 2030, and now it's like 9 years left for 2030. But back then, I think and I think we remain connected, right? And I think it was Sohail who connected me to John Sweeney. And John Sweeney happens to have Mexican food wherever he goes. So we went to a Mexican restaurant. And I think over there, John Sweeney connected me to Anil Chaudhary. So Anil Chaudhary is the guy who's in charge of A2I, right? And I think in 2016, that's when I was connected with him. And even though it was a conversation, I think you guys went radio silent for 2 years, and then I think suddenly there was this momentum where you guys also wanted to explore the future, right? Before the pandemic, right? And I think that's when again it started, right? And I think just openly and transparently sharing these things, because it's just small acts of connection, right? Like that you said, that creates the snowball effect of energy, and of course I think when the minister said it, I had a slight tear in my eye, because it was like it's just a very abstract when you're like thinking of it, hoping that one day it's going to happen, and then eventually you hear words coming out of her mouth that we actually dreamt of, right? And I think it doesn't happen one day, but it takes bit by bit.
I'd like to jump in and talk about the discourse building, because I've had the opportunity of being present in I think 1 or 2 meetings during the pandemic with the ministers, and I've heard some of those terms as well. So the feeling of wow, some of those words that we were a part of, we were a part of bringing together or drafting together, is being said at the highest level of policy making it was very rewarding. But at the same time, the fact that you said it took 2 years for people to come back, that also says that building a community is not easy. And a lot of the times, the people are playing the roles of kind of unsung heroes. And it's easy to be impatient. It's easy to, question yourself. What am I gaining in the process? Especially when you're trying to balance the role of leading an organization as opposed to trying to build a community or an ecosystem. That kind of comes up, and for me, quite often, when I'm trying to weigh out, am I doing justice to my organization? And at the same time, am I doing justice to the ecosystem by bringing everybody on board, by looking out for everybody and identifying what needs to be done, and essentially giving the spotlight to the individual or the organization that deserves it at that moment. And it may also mean at times that my organization takes the back seat. And so how do you balance that also in having those wonderful moments of building those robust ecosystems and so on. So,
yeah, like yeah. When do you shift to we, and when do you still hold on to the me? I guess, isn't that
yeah, exactly.
Maybe a question? But then I think just want to add to that, right, as well, because I know even when so the three of us basically, we're part of this network that we formed during the pandemic called Next Gen Edu, and it's basically a network of local actors and global actors. And we say global in the way that the UN or OECD might say global, but we know that it's not easy to actually form global networks, truly global networks, right? And because I mean that's another longer story, but I think there was a sudden evolution when it came, right? And I think even our first event where we had our Minister of Education, we had like Kiran Sethi from Design for Change, or Sal Khan from Khan Academy, or we had Kathy Hirsch-Pasek on basically thinking about how to like will education at home continue beyond COVID-19. And this was in May 2020, right? I think around that time when we had that event. But when we were forming NextGen Edu, we asked these questions like, are we just any other network? How are we different? What are we going to do? And I think Mehdi mentioned Rakib, I think, was talking about this idea of trust, right? How do we become a network that's different, but then slowly tries to build trust? And what is trust at the end of the day, right? And I think we kind of read up on different thinkers, and we came across David Sawyer's thinking in the Stanford Social Innovation Review about this idea about the network entrepreneur being anonymous, right? Like, and very easy that a lot of social entrepreneurs, we become celebrities in newspapers, win awards and all that, but the network entrepreneur intentionally tries to remain anonymous in his work. And we kind of embrace these 4 network principles, that it's about mission, not organization. It's about trust, not control. It's about humility, not brand. And we're not a hub, but a node in the constellation of different entities that are working on. And yeah, and I think and trust, it's not easy because, like as was said, there are people with various tensions, various agendas, or various or even and it's natural to have those agendas, right? In order for you to survive, you need to probably raise funds, you need to probably get closer to the government. So what happens typically in a lot of communities is probably like the vertical connectivity isn't that high, horizontal connectivity is low, like people are not working across silos. But how do you actually create authentic communities which are able to bridge that gap? And I think maybe if you want to share some of your examples, both from NextGen Edu and Edu Hub, like where do you think, like what work do you think in trust building and
Yeah.
those are,
So if I go I think you already mentioned the most important point. The trust is the most important thing. Like the people you have in your crisis, when you think that you are challenged, you need someone's help, and who is close to you, it gains the trust immediately. And when you are distanced from your other people, so you need to work more on the trust. And I think that the respecting others' interest is also very important. Like when you are efficient, you know that you are efficient, but you can't run fast because you need to go with your group. And when there is a shared vision, you need to onboard all the partners on the vision, and you have to be open to your open to and open, or like you need to have the flexibility, respect toward others' vision. And I think the already Ajo already mentioned that when we share our vision or a dream, it is the strongest dream, and all the people we can, if we can collaborate, we can continue this working like this. I think it works. And after all, everything is dependent on mindset. If you are like, you have the considerable mindset, you have the changing mindset, and you have the mindset of contribution, like you will not look into the interest of you. Sometimes you will get yourself a bit away from your interests, and that type of flexibility sometimes brings people together. And that's all we need, I think.
I think maybe just a question for all of us and people in the room as well. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was thinking about like this whole idea about shifting from me to we, right? And I think as well, when I was working at an Acumen Academy and you had the fellowship, we have this idea, this concept called polarities, right? Where if you completely go towards we, then the me gets sacrificed, right? But then different negative things happen, right? For example, you might get burned out, or maybe you don't get enough funding, and then you start going towards me again. But then if you go too much towards me, then you lose your allies, and then you lose trust, and you can't collaborate, and things don't get, and then you go back to we. And this is kind of like an infinity loop in which we exist, where we keep on shifting from the me to the we. And so it makes me wonder, and I think you did raise that question already, like how do you actually balance these tensions and navigate these tensions in the room? And I think it is uncomfortable, right? And I think we need to embrace the discomfort, right? Because I mean, not everything is linear and happy and everything goes well, right? And I think we do have good days and bad days, and but then how can we actually I mean, I think when sometimes there is that discomfort, I just wonder, sometimes we do have to create those spaces where we can share with each other.
You're saying I'm thinking of two things. First is the space that we curated, like the different kinds of arrangements we had, like especially the ones which we call community gatherings, where it's a more intimate sort of discussion, where we have certain prompts, and that allows us and the people in the room to be vulnerable together. But then how do you keep up that momentum is when we keep striving towards that destination, so-called destination or future that we all aspire to reach. And when you keep up the momentum by, like setting targets one after the other, like currently, all of us at Next Gen Edu are involved and immersed with the blended education policy, and we're contributing from each of our ends to whatever extent we can. And I think, like, also being able to identify these opportunities or create scopes or create these opportunities themselves can act as a cohesion towards to keep people together, to keep walking towards that end goal. Yeah, but then definitely, I mean, it's really challenging, especially like, I can speak for myself, like constantly asking myself, am I doing justice to my time as my foundation's head? Am I doing justice as a core member of Next Gen Edu? So yeah, it's very much alive for me.
Yeah, and thank you, Kiran, for that. I think one thing that we were also trying to be very cognizant of is the type of pedagogies that we embrace when we were doing these Next Gen Edu events, right? Like, for example, even now, I think what we're doing, even though the three of us are discussing, it's still kind of like a lecture, isn't it? Right? Because you guys are listening and not, you guys are passive actors right now. Like Renee and Gina, I can see you on video, but I don't know you. I don't know what your thoughts are right now. But I think it reminds me of like Paulo Freire, right? Paulo Freire, Brazilian educator who wrote this book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, right? And he talks about that pedagogy cannot be top down, right? Like, or it shouldn't be top down, right? And I think for people who are oppressed, and oppressed means, it doesn't matter, it doesn't just mean that poverty oppressed, you can even be well off and still be oppressed, right? And it talks about this idea that even oppressors are stuck in this cycle of oppression, right? And how to get out of this cycle won't be through traditional schooling, won't be through like just lectures and top-down pedagogies. And I think webinars are essentially top-down pedagogies because you can't really interact much with the speakers, right? Even now, I think we're going to be speaking, there's going to be a bit of Q&A, but we can't really go into a deeper discussion, right? And I think, but pedagogies where it's more social constructivist, more socially interactive, more where we break down like this wall between teacher and learner, right? And Paulo Freire talks about that no one is a teacher, no one is a student. Like, we're all teachers, students, and all student teachers. So what kind of pedagogy can enable that to happen where we're learning on the peer-to-peer basis? And I think trying to be very cognizant that that sort of pedagogy is not just in the classroom, but even in conferences, seminars, in workspaces, in political spaces, in religious spaces. And you'll see that the more extremist ideologies that are there are very top-down approaches, right? Even whether it's Wahhabism or extreme Hindutva or Theravadan Buddhism or far-right Christianity, we will see that it's top-down. It doesn't let people actually come and discuss. And I think even, yeah, I'm just wondering, just how do we actually be open and discuss these things? And I think maybe it's a moment where you guys can also feel free to jump in and ask your questions. Yeah. Or just join the conversation. Like, feel free to join. Yeah. And if you have any reactions, or maybe if you agree or disagree with what I said. Yeah, I can see some nods from Renee, Gina, Kiran, or Lisa. Maybe if you guys want to jump in. Yeah, Gina.
I'll jump in, but I came in late, and I'm sort of clueless about what this whole thing is, and I just kind of saw it and during the week, and I thought that's exactly the place I need to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very excited to see a group of young people who are working hard on this, because I've worked hard on this my whole life. I've been a therapist for 41 years and work a lot with the whole idea of how do we, I think of it as a spiritual thing, being a good person, and how do we work together and how do we not polarize. And the last few years have been very tough. So I'm just here to hear what people are doing and see what else there is in the world for me to join in on. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Gina, for that. Yeah, and just for your context, we just talked a little bit about the context of education in Bangladesh and some of the communities that we did. But I think listening is so important in terms of this practice. Kiran, I think you were about to say something.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great call out, that listening is very important, because without listening, you can't have actual conversation. It's very top down. And, I know there's been just a lot of writing and discussion over the last, I won't say few years, I think it's probably a little bit longer, of going from dialogues to polylogues, and when that sort of transformation starts to happen, it starts to be hopefully less of a polarity, but how to actually engage that or to activate that. I think that's still out there for people to explore and try to figure out. So.
No, thank you. And I think even, and apologize, I think I'm the only one responding, but even in the the framing of the ecosystem to ecosystem, I think that came from Otto Sharma's course on his ULab course on edX. So Otto Sharma leads the MIT's Presencing Institute, and he talks about these 4 ways of listening, right? And I think one way of listening is where we're just downloading, putting stuff in one ear and coming out to the other. The second way of listening is just listening to understand, right? Where we just listen to, it's kind of like a transactional exchange, like, okay, I understand you, you understand me, and that's it. And most of us apparently operate in this level 1 and 2. But then he goes a level deeper and talks about listening with an open heart, or listening with empathy or with feeling, right? Trying to understand what the emotions that the other person is feeling. And the 4th one that I still don't understand, but I'm trying to learn, is this whole generative listening with an open will, listening in a way that when you're speaking, like, I try to look at your highest future potential, and I try to think about my highest future potential and see how we connect with each other, and we're just generating. So it's a whole different plane of listening, and then you'll see that our heart, body, mind completely shifts when we're moving in these different ways of listening. And I think so I think Otto Sharma and I guess the whole ecosystem tries to ask, like, what would the world look like when we're operating from different levels of listening as well.
Thank you, Kiran. I was just thinking about what you said, and I was thinking that currently the culture that we are part of promotes superheroes, promotes individuals as, celebrates individuals, celebrates heroes, whereas building an ecosystem essentially requires people to be kind of anonymous, to be in the service of others, to be kind of cheerleaders for others, to put the spotlight where and when it's needed, and necessarily that doesn't have to be yourself, and that isn't yourself in most of the cases. So like really how do we find that balance, or like is the way I'm framing it, there's a natural bias towards kind of a servant leadership. So yeah, I'm also trying to think how do we manage that, and how do we stay away from this this culture of celebrating superheroes. Yeah.
Well, it really starts to, I'm thinking about the superheroes, and if you're thinking about just modeling systems in general, like the superhero is probably very much that kind of one-way-ish type of situation. But then, as things start to, be more of an equal exchange, then it starts to shift away from there being a superhero, and maybe that's okay. But it does require that openness, or that open heart that you were just talking about, where, change is scary, for a lot of people. Like the status quo is something, or what their perception of status quo is reassuring in its boundaries, but letting go of that is difficult. So finding ways to have those conversations and shift that balance within the system, so it's allowed to be complex is okay, dynamic is okay. Dynamic is that conversation and that sharing. That's one of, I don't know. It seems like that's where, that might start to open up. So whether that's ideological, whether that's policy, or however that translates, person, I, other, if that blurs a little bit, but if there's an equal exchange between the two, does it deplete one at the sake of the other? So
yeah, and just I'm also thinking that even I think even what both of you are saying, that even I guess the role of the media as well in like highlighting heroes, in the sense that I think even with this quotation I said, that even I think like things like awards and certain types of recognition or rankings are basically ways of like where you give individuals the credit, but then it's never the role of an individual, right? It's always an ecosystem that led to that individual achieving whatever they achieved, right? And sometimes there'll be people that we'll never know in history who probably played a role in that work, and it makes you wonder. Joyce, you wanted to jump in?
I did. So role models, I believe, have their place. And I'd like to give you an example. Once upon a time, I was blessed to be able to meet a guy named Dean Kamen. And Dean Kamen is the guy who invented the Segway, as well as the portable dialysis machine. And Dean was lamenting the fact that young people look up to sports figures and celebrities, and that scientists don't have the same cachet when it comes to influencing our young people to follow that path. And I think it's important to understand that there is a place for role models like scientists. There is a place for individual servant leaders who put themselves not necessarily first, but they're there for their people. I had occasion at 1 o'clock this morning, my time, Central Time, to speak to the graduating class for something called Click 2 in the Philippines. And it was a wonderful experience. I wish I had had an opportunity for more interaction with the audience. But one of the things I said, I talked about listening, and I talked about the value of listening. And I had no idea of the person that you're talking about, but listening with your heart and your eyes as well as your ears, and the value of really being able to be empathetic with others, so that there's a stronger connection and that they will experience being connected to you at a higher level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy.
complete.
And yeah, and we're running out of time. And of course, these conversations always have a continuous loop. I just wanted to also acknowledge that, yeah, I mean, I think definitely like role models, at the end of the day, like when I can't wake up, I think of Nelson Mandela. Like he woke up, why can't I wake up? Right. And I think, but also like I'm thinking about role communities as well, right? Like role groups of people that we can also learn from, right? Like, and I think maybe role ecosystems. And I wonder whether more stories of those groups and ecosystems should also be spread. And I think maybe just finish it, wrap it up, and just tell us that what's the highlight, what's next, and we're done for today.
I think it has started, though it started with like 3 of us, but it ended with all of us here, and it was really a good vibe. And if I have to add my last sentence, like I would like to refer to Socrates, like he said 1,000 years back, that know thyself. And if we look into our surroundings, and if we also look into within ourselves, we may find out that there is no self. There is all is we, and how we all are connected to each other, and how our every action is really important. I think to highlight our whole discussion into one word, I think this is very important to realize our true potential, and our potential of our each action, and how it implies in our education system and the human civilization, and so on. So it is timeless to be on time, and to focus what we have right now, what we have in our hand, what I can contribute myself, and always believe in the connectedness, and how the collective effort can make real changes in our world. And that's my part. Yeah, thank you. And Shakil, if you have to yeah, so that's really good of you, and it was really great to be with you in this space, and I hope to I hope we'll cross connect once again in future, and it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. If you want Shakil, Azwa, and Mehdi to put your contact information or some way for colleagues to reach out, feel free to put that in the chat. Again, hopefully this is a way to have more conversations that are building larger ecosystems.